First off, welcome to Numbers Therapy Episode 3. Topic for today is market structure evolution, lessons, and frameworks for future bets. In general, if they're coming on here, that means they know something, and I'm just here to get it out of them. And so I'm sitting here like everyone on here, just with popcorn as well, kind of listening in. So purpose, just to review that, purpose is to talk through macro stuff and bring on and showcase our experts in here. Goal of numbers therapy, or the goals of numbers therapy, are so that everyone can understand how all of the big things fit together, make better decisions with NFTs and other investments using a balanced perspective, learn about or from some of our people in here. And what we've come to realize through the first few episodes too, right, is just get different perspectives, right? Even though these are really excellent people, they don't all trade or think the same way necessarily. So definitely getting the perspectives. And then lastly, learn about different areas and opportunities that are out there as well and different ways of thinking. So also just as a reminder, like I always give, there are different levels in here, right? So it's just really important that everyone is along for the ride as we go through. And so if there's any, question, even if it feels like it's elementary or please make sure to drop the question in, even if it's like a definition, because I want to ensure that those are answered along the way, so that everyone's along for the full ride and understanding everything. So, and then lastly, important note and disclaimer, none of what you hear in here is financial advice. It is all opinions. So without further ado, this dude, I don't know, we just like his style. He's a very thoughtful investor, good with tech, very solid with overall market structure and developing thesis, balanced with granular project analysis. He's just a good, smart trader. We also believe he's got a pretty solid sneaker collection, making him cooler than me in one additional way. So without further ado, hailing from the South Beach area, let's welcome Easusj.
What's up, man? What's up, guys? Thanks for having me on. I was looking forward to this. I know we wanted to try to slot this for next week, but with other side, which will factor into what we're going to talk today, I figured, let me get my mind right for that. I'll talk kind of like how I played that and, how that flowed into my strategy for how, that play went and why I postponed this to this week. But been looking forward to this for a while and happy to be here with you guys.
Oh, did something happen with other side recently? Okay. So, all right. So let's just start off maybe with a bit of your background. What's your experience? Kind of whatever you feel comfortable sharing as it relates to that.
Yeah, so I came from the corporate world. I worked for a large company, Fortune, 50 or 100 company for about 15 years. My background is in computer science and economics, major in economics, minor in computer science. For most of my career, I was kind of a hybrid. Hybrid reads not really good at anything, so wasn't good enough to code and wasn't good enough to be originally a finance guy. So they kind of stuck me in this kind of liaison role between IT and finance. Eventually, the market kind of caught up to my skill set. So finance people became more technical, and I progressed into like a controller, like a regional kind of CFO for a book of business. Eventually, I ran about a $4 billion book of business. And then I branched off into data science and analytics and built a team of about 25 people that branched from everywhere from the Miami all the way to India and managed those. In 2019, took a package, did a little bit of management consulting. But during that time, I built a sneaker business on the side, and which really just was born out of me, a love for sneakers, and I'll get into that later. But eventually, when the COVID hit, I transitioned all of my time and resources into the sneaker business, and eventually, here we are.
And so then, I mean, that of course transitioned as well, I think, into Top Shot too, right? So you certainly have like the sneaker background and maybe even like sneaker botting, but then Top Shot came about. So like, do you remember how Top Shot came about and kind of like what your entry was into the NFT market? And then also, I know you're also a trader as well, right? So like, how did the NFTs and like general trading come about? Where did that come from?
Yeah, so when I was in corporate and I had tons of disposable income, I wasn't really the best, I would say the best investor. I was probably over invested in my company, like a lot of people are, right? You get RSUs or options, those just accumulate over time, so you end up with a huge bag there. You get a salary from the same company, and then I think I had self-directed my 401k to the company as well, right? So I hired a guy to be my successor, who's now the CFO of our business unit. Really sharp guy. I think he went to Cornell, and he was like, "Hey, man, I got to sit you down and talk finance with you." So he helped me diversify my portfolio there. At the same time, I went to business school, learned a little bit about finance, and that kind of piqued my interest for investing. I would say that would have been in terms of like actual investing, not just buying Bitcoin and holding it. That would have been probably like around 2016, 2017 ish. Actually, no, that would have been probably around 2014, 2015 ish. And that made me realize things like risk management and that kind of stuff. But once I left the corporate world and had to actually like eat what I kill, went into the options market, which was really good early on, right? Like, we were still kind of like in a value investing phase in the market. You could find some good opportunities, and then up comes Tesla, retail investors, and kind of like this momentum kind of trading that we kind of see now in the market, and some of this we're observing now in what's going on in both crypto and the equities market. But that's where I kind of took a step back and realized that my investment strategy needed to change, right? So divested a little bit from options, and dive deeper into like the sneaker business. And the way the sneaker business led me to NFTs was we started in sneakers. Sneakers was really profitable. I'd say from like 2015 on to like about maybe 2017, 18. Then it became super competitive. A lot of commercial bots came along. So the bots that you guys are seeing now in NFTs, that evolution of botting, same thing happened in sneakers. It was like custom scripts at first, and then it turned into like full-on commercial bots where anybody who could read a guide could kind of run the bot. So that just opened up the market to a lot more, kind of speculative traders. And so as that market became diluted, as that opportunities in the market became diluted, I moved into retail right around when COVID happened. So retail was just applying the same concept of sneaker botting to buying anything that was low supply, high demand, pools, everything, pools, hot tubs, lamps, whatever it was, right? I think Grape talked about a lot of this as well in voice chat. And then one of the groups I was in, there's this really sharp guy. His name is his group's name is Resale Calendar. He's an interesting guy, but he's always kind of like right on the front end of a lot of things. He introduced Top Shot to the group, and so as I was like lugging these hot tubs around, I was seeing people making 20K, 30K, and then I saw a guy said he invested 2K, got to 100K. This was like maybe November of 2020. I want to say November 2020. And I say, okay, I got to look at this Top Shot thing. Didn't dive in right away, but I got in, I think, either late December or early January. And that was like my evolution from sneakers it was actually from the retail botting space into Top Shot.
That's pretty cool. That's cool that you remember that connection too, and history. And I feel like we have several of those stories in here, so it's always cool to hear. So okay, so then let's maybe focus on a bit of history and structure, because I know that's like the main focus of our discussion today. So let's look backwards into like the decentralized, let's call it NFT world, right? Meaning, not so much Top Shot, but like NFTs more as we know it currently. So what's the history on market structure there? What have we learned so far? Like, how do you think about that in general?
So I actually want to rewind back to Top Shot because I think that's important, right? And talking about how we onboard people. So you would see here, you see like kind of like a diverse background of people in terms of how they enter the market, but a lot of them came in through Top Shot. I think this group was started from Top Shot. If you came into Top Shot pre, let's say January, you made a shit ton of money. I mean, it was just printing money. The Discord, I mean, the platform I think was closed at one point. If you were getting Series One in packs, the packs was sitting on the packs were just sitting on the website. I mean, it was hard to check out because the website was so buggy, but you could order 20 at a time, right? And I remember the first day I was opening up LeBron Series One, LeBron like 7500 LE packs, like it was nothing, right, at the time. So if you got in early then, your experience with NFTs would have been a little bit different than somebody that came in February, right? And I want to start there because since Top Shot was a big onboarding place, the kind of outlook on NFTs for people, depending on when they came into Top Shot, would have been different. If you made a lot of money in Top Shot early, then as you saw the opportunities in the decentralized markets like OpenSea and some of these other places, it would have been an easy transition over, right? You would have seen, oh, hey, I could just move money into MetaMask and I could, buy low, sell high. If you came in February, you would have bought the peak, you would have seen the retraction, and even though you would have been introduced to NFT, in the top like 0.1% of the world, you would have been hesitant when you saw you've been hesitant when you saw the trend. And then the last bit is if you bought early and didn't sell the top, you would have also seen this cycle, and it would have looked a lot like how crypto looked in 2017, right, for a lot of people. And so that onboarding experience and what drove that kind of mechanism was simply Top Shot. Instead of focusing on collectors, they started to focus on the VC money coming in and making sure that they could grow their member count so that they could go and tout that to VCs and say we have 1 million wallets on Top Shot, right? That's kind of where the supply thing started kicking in on Top Shot, right? And so if you step up from there into NFTs, I bet if you were to do a poll here, depending on when people came in, you would see, people that made money in Top Shot probably were early on Bored Apes. Some people that lost money in Top Shot probably passed on top Bored Apes, right? And that kind of step off from centralized to decentralized would have determined where your jump off would have been, in this new world we're in right now on OpenSea and some of these decentralized exchanges.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, I mean, I guess the other thing that you and I talk about sometimes is like the big projects in general, right? Be it Bored Apes and kind of their position and what they mean to the marketplace. So, do you want to just touch on that real fast, maybe a little bit about how you think about that too?
Yeah, so like we're I think I heard this on someplace the other day, but we're in a news driven market, right? We don't, especially with a new commodity like NFTs, it's hard to put do any kind of value investing in this space, right? I mean, everything every month is a new kind of matter. Every month we're trying to reevaluate like how we look at the market. So what really drives the market is news and momentum. And so if you were to go back to Top Shot, they started to have Wall Street Journal articles about some guy invested 5,000 and made 6 million, right? So that makes a headline, and that brings fresh new people, fresh new speculators to the space, right? Now, whenever that fails, the people that didn't get in, they start to go, oh, see, that was that was a scam. That was a that was a that was just a point in time, right? Kind of opportunity. Same thing with Bored Apes. You see Bored Apes, you see people getting a point oh 0.08, and you see people, cashing out Bored Apes for 400,000 $1 million. That's another thing that triggers more wallets to come into the space. So whenever you have these kind of iconic, kind of leading assets within a space, it's very important for those assets to be successful, or they can delay the new kind of users and speculators coming into the market. Which is why I've always supported. I know I haven't bought a Bored Ape, but I've always kept it on my radar because this market is going to go as Yuga goes right now, and we're kind of seeing that right now with the other side. The other side drop.
Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense. And yeah, I think like building on top of what you're saying too, to some extent, like I think about it as like how much news can the market make in general, right? So we kind of need lots of good projects that are creating excitement and buzz. But then like Yuga, for instance, kind of sets the standard, right, for how people perceive NFTs to some extent, given their place in it, and certainly like other big projects too. So yeah, that makes complete sense what you're saying. So okay, so then I think the related question, and sometimes where I have fun in these conversations is hearing like, okay, well, this is what we think is context. Now, what does that actually mean for you, right? Like, how do you actually think about things? So, given that context, like, how do you think through your NFT portfolio, right? Like, what frameworks do you use? How flexible are those frameworks? Like, how do you think through that?
Yeah, so so for a lot, believe it or not, I depend on a lot. I depend a lot on the sentiment in this space because there's so many different types of traders here, right? And so many different. One thing I always say is like a broken clock is right twice a day. So what I mean by that is, you know, a good strategy now could be a bad strategy later, right? I think the big thing is understanding the psychology behind why these successful traders are doing what they're doing, and then picking out the pieces of it that resonate with you and your kind of mental state and like kind of how how your psychology and how you approach the market. So for me, my goal was originally when I got into space was to find a good entry for Ape. And matter of fact, I brought a lot of my kind of whale buddies that were on the sidelines. Their entry point was like punks and apes, right? But for me, since I don't have outside income, I got to make sure I don't lock up as much liquidity in one asset or a couple of assets, and make sure I could get multiples on my money, right? So in the early days, my goal was just to accumulate ETH, get multiples of my money, and my goal on getting the ape was more, I would say, as a marketing investment. Kind of like buying into that club so that I could expand my brand more so than looking at it as an investment. Now that's proven wrong since it ran from 30 to 150, but at the time it was unprecedented that we thought apes would crack 100, right? There's a lot of things that went right for that to happen. And so once that train ran away, it's still the same. Look for opportunities and look for multiples on my investments, right? So, like, what does that mean? It means I generally don't trade secondary because that's a momentum game and that's a timing situation. And so when and then I'll wait to either scoop assets at the floor, or I'll try to mint assets in bulk whenever that's going on, to try to accumulate the ETH so then I can make a big play whenever that big play comes. And that's kind of been my mind frame, right? But on the collector side, because what I see is, and what everybody's talking about in the news is, now everybody's been cooped up looking at a computer for a while, and that's kind of how this space was successful. Um, but eventually, people are going to want to go out there and touch grass, right? And so most of my, well, first of all, I made enough money now to be able to take a higher time frame view. So I'm not day trading as much as I used to anymore. I moved most of my capital to do coin trades and try to scalp stuff, and that's kind of what I spend a lot of time doing now. But as I look at that longer time frame, I'm looking for things that unlock IRL experiences, because I think that's where the market's going to go, and I feel like that's where the opportunities from a business perspective are going to be. So as many of those assets I could accumulate with good groups, I'm going to try to get for now, and then also continue to look for devalued assets that I could scoop once I feel like the market is kind of bottomed out and there's new momentum and new fresh money, fresh powder in the market.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So yeah, it sounds like your time horizon is a little bit expanded. The short term
Yep.
kind of maybe it's sniping and flipping, things like that. Maybe you don't have as much focus on. Maybe it's because it's a little challenging. Maybe it's because the current status of the market, and what stage it's at right now. So okay, that makes complete sense. So
And I have no eye for art. Some of the people here, can look at something and say that's going to be a hit. I just don't have that eye, right? So I know what my shortcomings are, and I don't try to play a game I can't win. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
that's a great point actually to make. That's a really good point to make. It's kind of like a core competency question, right? Because I agree. I'm in the same boat as you. Like I make fun of myself always for not being able to see the art, and I oftentimes have like shared it here to people. Which one of these is nicer, and like get a vote, that kind of a thing. But there are other things that that I'm, and then certainly you're good at too, right? And staying within those lanes, I think, and just winning on those games. I mean, I think one other thing to call out too that I always forget and have to remind myself of sometimes is like you could play well in one specific category, like a really narrow category, and be really successful, right? Like you could literally just focus on IRL utility projects. You could literally just focus on brands. You could literally and you can win there. You could focus on one project and trade it effectively, possibly, and just become a specialist at that one thing. And it's like so tempting, let's call it, to like always see all the new projects that are coming in every day, and the new excitement and the action, whatever else, and chase action, when in reality becoming a specialist either from like a category standpoint or even like a functional skill set standpoint. So for instance, like maybe removing minting because minting is not your focus, or whitelist hunting, but instead becoming just an expert sniper and looking across various categories as a sniper, for instance, right? And I feel like that specialization could be really valuable, although I'll be honest, like I get that wrong all the time, and always have to remind myself of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people that are experts, and I guess the other thing is, I guess what I forgot to say was, because I have my infrastructure from sneakers, right? And I think I showed everybody here kind of how to do the multiple Discord thing and kind of do so I do a lot of that, right? I do a lot of like spreading out whitelists and spreading out stuff across 50 different MetaMasks and Discords. And that takes a lot of time. In a market where mints aren't as successful as they used to be, it is the return on the time investment is not as high, but it's about being prepared. One thing I learned from the sneaker game is, once the drop is happening and if you're not prepared, you're too late. So even if it's even if it's not super profitable now, at some point when the market picks up, you're going to need all of that infrastructure. And so I've been investing in that, and I hope to get that infrastructure, even more tuned in before we get on the next run.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So okay, so as we know, and you're a great person to ask about this, right? But as we know, NFTs are certainly not the whole picture, right? Like there's the macro, there's the Fed meeting, there's various hot markets that are zero sum, meaning they pull from each other, right? How do you think about that, right? Like how do you think about attention and how you focus your attention, how you balance between kind of like what you were just talking about, balance your time and your focus between those various opportunities that exist?
Yeah, so when we did our session, I think Avalon, the session I did with Avalon, and I talked to Avalon, as much as I can whenever he's free about his kind of like macro view because he's been through one thing is you got to build your calluses, right? I've been through one cycle where I went up and reduced 95%, but he's been through I think two or maybe even three cycles, right? And so you'll see a trader like that take a very, very high time frame view, very macro view. And so for me, yeah, I tend to take first that what's the macro kind of crypto view, right? So crypto isolated by itself, where are we? What's the sentiment? That kind of stuff. And then I'll peek over to the equities market, right? And start to try to see the sentiment there. What you tend to see is like whatever the news cycle is in the equity market somehow bleeds into crypto at some point. So I try to keep a pulse on what are they saying over there? Are they touting inflation? Are they bridging the inflation story to the crypto story? Are they ignoring that story? I mean, like how many times am I seeing Bitcoin in commercials? Or crypto in commercials, which is a huge uptick from what I saw about a year ago, right? To try to anticipate when that like fresh powder is going to come into the market, just to keep a pulse, so that whenever I do see an uptick, I could, quickly kind of frame, is this that flow into our space that we were looking for, or is this just, the invisible hand kind of moving the markets around? So yeah, I try to pay as much attention as I can to the kind of like, kind of normie news cycle with the caveat that they're always late, right? So yesterday was all the market, yesterday before the Fed, it was, oh, the market's going to go down. After the Fed, it was like, oh my God, the markets are, everything is retroactive for them, right? So you got to keep that in mind, but you have to understand the narrative of, where the, kind of like median investors coming in, so that you could plan what your strategy is for the next, next move you want to make. So yeah, I do keep a pulse.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I want to call out there too, because it's probably a little bit of like one of the two elephants in the room right now, right? Maybe one of the elephants would be like other side. Maybe we can get to touching on that. But the other
Yeah.
elephant, of course, is the fact that the markets are down. The Dow's down almost 1,100 today so far, right? ETH is down, BTC's down, all that good stuff. And just to kind of like preempt that to some extent, because like Easusj and I were talking about that before, other than the fact that we know that the markets are a little bit damaged generally, right? And we think there's a bit of recession, Shaggy's talked about that, other folks as well. It's just kind of generally unstable right now, for lack of a better description. So it's very tough to get a pulse on exactly what's going to happen now, exactly which way the markets are going to react. And we're just kind of in this like choppy, uncertain area, for lack of a better description. And it's tough. So I don't know. It's tough to sometimes get a perfect pulse on exactly what's happening in the market, exactly where the market's going to go in the near term, that kind of a thing. And I just wanted to call that out because I think it's probably on a lot of people's minds, especially coming off of yesterday and this morning. And I think with uncertainty, sometimes uncertainty means just like it's not a bad strategy sometimes to like take a pause, right, and digest everything that's going on in the market and like wait for a little bit of clear vision in terms of which way the market's going and why a decision makes sense and that kind of a thing. Do you agree with that? What do you think?
100%. And even yesterday, I mean, you and I had a conversation this morning where yesterday I think we both were short, or at least bearish, and then the market just turned like, fuck off. We're going parabolic, right? And it's like we're like, okay. And like my first instinct was, okay, ride this parabolic rate, but something didn't make sense, right? And then today you see, this complete reversal even below where we were yesterday. And my first instinct was, we'll short the market again. And then, but who knows, tomorrow we could snap right back up. So unless you have some kind of pulse on some kind of underlying indicator, unless you're read into why these things are happening, sometimes the best place to be is on the sideline and just wait until things settle out and the market picks a direction and you could go. Because, you know, everybody was wrong on this one, unless you were on the sideline or unless you had really, really, really tight take profit levels.
Yeah.
And the name of this game is to keep as much capital as possible so that you can, so that you can make that one right bet whenever things go parabolic. We just got to stay afloat until the next run. So don't get chopped up trying to, ride momentum, because we don't know where these things are going to shake out, and they're just chopping up the liquidity in the market. You gotta be
Yeah.
careful of that.
Yeah, that's like I feel like it's a super unpopular thing to say, right? In here, where we all like trading and finding action, things like that, right? But sometimes I do see that, myself included, like get into trouble with that, right? Where there's a mint that's happening and a bit of a choppy market, and it kind of goes back to this, like, for me at least, like my frame on this has been, I would rather a pretty good project in a really good market than a really good project in a crappy market, for instance, right? And to preserve capital and make sure you're a bit more safe and the downside's protected and that kind of a thing. So, it's tricky, right? When we're in this like uncertain day or two post other side, for instance, and like I know we did well on as a whole on PXN yesterday, and that wound up well. But I know it was a little bit shaky going in, and I don't know. Maybe that one was an example where there was like asymmetric risk, asymmetric upside, and therefore was a good bet. But it's just using it as an example, right? Like when you're in these choppy times, like maybe erring slightly on the side of caution sometimes is the good play to be able to make. So, okay, so Easusj, in general, what are your thoughts about the NFT world right now overall? Right, like how do you see it? What needs to be fixed? Like, how are you thinking about it?
Oh man, oof! I thought you said you had some shit to do in like 15 minutes or whatever.
Just a small question for you.
Well, I see, and I've said this privately. I saw the other side opportunity as a huge opportunity to bring fresh eyes, fresh wallets, fresh powder. Powder means capital, into the NFT space, because from the for the outside world, like let's say the world that doesn't understand NFTs, and for those people that aren't living this day to day, is a very, very, very tricky market. Like a lot of people have been here since July and are big just because we were early. But if you came in November, December, a lot of people are down, right, from where, or they don't have as good of a multiples as other people that came in early. And so the smart money is gonna want to wait until they get a short bat. And I think, for people coming in, just based on what I anticipated Yuga doing, shopping their vision around and being those people, that would have been the surest bet for big money to step in, right? And so I think it's safe to say that the execution on that was subpar. I would go so far as to say they failed in terms of, if the goal was to grow the space. I think that window or that opportunity was missed, both from a post-launch execution. I'm not talking about just price. Of course, price matters, but I mean, just explaining what it is people are buying and all this stuff. Like, I think what they showed the outside world is, these guys will buy or these people will buy anything. All we got to do is, dangle it in front of them and they'll buy it without even knowing what it is. And here we are a week later, we still can't fully, articulate what it is we bought and why certain things are valuable versus others, right? So I think that's a miss. I think the other miss is, we look at the gas fees and all that stuff, all of that liquidity going out of the ecosystem. I think it's like about $150 million. I can't remember. That's gone. Not to mention the money that was dumped into the project and the secondary fee volume that's gone. That's money that's gone. That's about a day's worth of volume on OpenSea. Imagine if we just had that today. What would floors look like, across the board, right? So from that perspective, I think, I think it was, I think that hurt the market. I think that hurt the market a lot. And then, we're in an interesting space overall when we look at, because there's two sides to this NFT market, right? There are collectors and there's creators. And I think we have completely oscillated to over, um, paying creators, right? So, before it was probably a little bit more slanted to the collector size, right? We had point 0.1, point 0.2 mints. It had enough room for momentum to happen. And if we are in a momentum market, that's important to give people entry points, and then secondary and tertiary, all those entry points, so that everybody's making money along the way. And if everybody's making money along the way and that money is flowing to, in the market, then it gets reinvested because people see I put money in, I get money out. When you give creators money and they don't give you immediate returns or utility, what you're basically saying is, I'm going to prepay you and hope that you give me utility, and then that money is gone. And then how do we get that momentum that has been so important for this market? So the combination of that liquidity suck and not fail to bring new wallets in, and then this kind of disproportionate slant towards creators sucking money out of the ecosystem. I think we gotta, maybe take a step back and hit a little bit of a reset button, is what I would say right now, and really only focus on, or mostly focus on, your big plays on conviction projects. So, making big bets on anything else, I think you could win, but I think it's a little bit of hot potato until you catch a bad break. That's my take.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting balance too. I feel like between, I mean, of course, totally agreed with you on like the deferred compensation structure and creators having to develop to start to earn like substantial royalties. Like, I love that, right? That's what I think what many of us love about the space. But there's also some balance there in terms of them getting some initial capital to be able to do some of the things that they want to do, because it is a startup, right? For lack of a better description. And I was actually I won't talk about which project it was, but I was actually just running numbers on a project yesterday to get a sense of what their initial capital was, what their cash flows were on an ongoing basis from royalties, to just get a sense of like what they could do, for lack of a better description. And it was not a very
Mm-hmm.
expensive, it wasn't the cheapest, not a very expensive mint. And they have, like, because they were able to build something and because they were able to provide news and a little bit of innovation, whatever, like they have substantial cash flow now. Like they can continue to build and continue to grow and continue to add value, and they're off to the races. And all they had to do was take, a little bit of a haircut compared to probably what they could have charged up front, and you're off to the races at that point. So I think it's an important thing you're saying.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that. Like, I don't want the message to be, I'm siding with creators or collectors. I think that, because somebody would say, well, you don't have to buy, right? But we all know that it's a momentum game, and you know what's going to happen. What I'm saying is, the way the ecosystem is now and the way we are now, um, we got to be very careful where we deploy capital, because I think we're overpaying. I think if we look at the risk reward, we're overpaying for the majority of the investments that we're getting. And we have to hold people accountable to, hey, we're not just buying art here. I mean, I got what? I don't even want to talk about how many thousand NFTs I got, but I mean, shit, I got like maybe like 8 paintings in my house. Like, I don't need all this shit, right? So no, I'm in here because I'm investing, and you are starting a business, and this isn't just me buying your art. This is a relationship that we should be treating as such, and we need to be very cognizant about how we structure that relationship, right? On both sides, both the
Yeah,
collector and the, yeah.
it seems like a smaller version. I just remember when, like, it must have been, I can't remember timelines anymore, but it must have been like 2-3 months ago, right, when Pixelmon came out, and we minted at 3 ETH, and Jinzo just had a shit fit on here about how it was just swung way too far in the overexpensive, and the market has to correct. And we're not there, obviously. We're not in like as egregious of a position as Pixelmon, but yeah, I agree with you that the market has to fix itself a little bit as it relates to pricing and risk-adjusted pricing. That makes sense. So yeah, in general, and where do you think we're headed as an NFT market? Like, and then also, where are you focusing more of your attention? How are you thinking about it?
So because I firmly still believe in the, money flows into the safer, so if I were to zoom out, I would say, um, until I see all the accumulation action happen at the Bitcoin and Ethereum level, because we need to accumulate there, right? It's not like the average out. We need more dollars in the space, so right. So we used to be 2 trillion. I can't remember how much of the market cap dropped from where it was whenever we were at our peak in the fall. But we need outside money to come in so that we could get price action going in the right direction. So until I see that, I'll be looking at price action on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and those kinds of things, and that's where I would be. But right now I'm in cash, but eventually I'll be deploying capital into Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then looking for that trickle down effect and looking for multiples on those next tier levels. So right now I'm looking at what are the big two doing, And when do we see the bounce on some of these alts that are extremely undervalued, so that we can so I can get multiples of my money on that bounce from the coin perspective? Then I'm hoping that I get the multiples on that play that I could flow back into devalued NFT projects. And then eventually I'd want to take that capital and lock some up into like conviction long-term plays, which would be like, 2 to 5 year holds. That's kind of like the cycle that I'm thinking about in my mind right now. But, I'm kind of just sitting on the starting line, waiting for the market to shake out and start to pick a direction. You know what I mean? Because we haven't really picked one yet.
So you kind of think the rotation goes from like BTC to the next biggest, like ETH, and the next biggest alts, to then
Yeah.
mid and small caps, and then eventually NFTs. So you think that crypto and NFTs are kind of connected in the same chain, basically, in flow of funds.
Yeah, I used to think NFT was more closer to a shitcoin, but if I look at the total NFT market, it may, and I just look at how wide NFTs are, it may almost be like a lower tier mid cap, right? In terms and it may look like a safer play than we originally thought, just based on how large it's gotten. And so yeah, I would want to see gains in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then I'd be looking at those mid cap plays. I'll deploy some capital into like the DGen long all plays, but then I'd probably start looking earlier than I would before into like what's the value project that I could get a 5x, 10x multiple on, right? Because everything is crashed out, or at least everything is crashing out. I don't know what the floor is yet, but yeah, I look at it like that. Same structure: large cap, mid cap, small cap, and then multiples up back up to large cap.
That makes sense. So I actually have a fun question for Easusj, but before we get there, just a reminder, if anybody has questions, please drop them in now. We'll jump to the fun question in a second, and then we'll have time on the back end as well for questions. But please, if anybody has any questions, beginner or otherwise, please drop them into guest questions. Always appreciated. So, okay. So let's just do a fun question in here. I just want to be really, really careful with this question, okay? Because it's more about the why than it is the what. But the question is, I mean, we trade NFTs in here, right? Amongst other things. What top bets have you excited? What's your time frame on them? And far more importantly than the what, again, like I just want to make sure this is about learning, right, in analysis. But far more important than the what, why do you like these bets so much? Like, what is your thought process behind them? Anything that come to mind that you can share there? Or even if it's not something that immediately comes to mind, like maybe talk through how you would think about a certain NFT project that you kind of like or something, and what your thought process is.
That's a tough one. Because you're always going to be anchored in the meta you were in when you made the call, right? So I love the gaming space when we first got into it because it seemed like the natural next thing. So naturally, I have a pretty big orc bag that I'm still gonna hold because I'm still betting that we'll get a news pump and it'll have some historical significance. And I still feel like gaming is an entry point. But I'm a little bit less bullish on it because the tokenomics, I think, of like the gaming stuff is TBD, right? I think it's really hard to get right, and I don't think anybody has gotten it really right yet. But if you'd asked me a couple months ago, I would have said gaming for sure. And I have Ethos, I have another game I won't even mention here because I don't want anybody looking at it. Because I haven't made any money, and you know what it is, but I haven't made any money on it yet, and it's like probably one of my big bets. But it might just be, I might have just committed a federal offense and burned all that capital, right? And made me zero. Um, but I just look at where would be the massive entry points, for the masses to come in, and gaming seemed like a good bet. I still do think that IRL unlocking kind of like real life utility is still just getting started. We saw a ticket and those kinds of things. And for me, it's like as I started to rebalance my life and going back out, I'm gonna definitely I love the ticket thing. I'm probably gonna pick up a couple more passes here soon. I love the um whatever that vehicle wine thing, like these things where you're investing in stuff that I could, it's an investment for me and it opens up a free trip for me to take Legna on and go experience some stuff outside or take some friends on and, show them that kind of stuff. Those are things that I'll be focused on now. And then like brands, like, you guys know how I feel about, time and some of those guys as things when the masses come and they start looking for familiar names, they're going to gravitate to the things that they recognize in their in their current space, and those things also crashed out, right? So I made big bets on those guys, on those 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 types of projects. I do think Yuga will do well long term. I do think this metaverse thing is a couple years out, and I do think that if you got in early here, you're gonna earn really good multiples as long as they execute on your investment. So I would look to accumulate those. But it feels a little bit like those may be which one is MySpace, which one is Facebook type thing. I mean, I don't, the younger guys, but the younger people here probably don't even know MySpace. But MySpace was a dominant player early, and then Facebook, and then Instagram, and then TikTok. You don't want to be betting big on MySpace because that no longer exists. So I don't think I know what one I want to bet on long term yet, but that's the kind of framework I'm looking at it on. Like where will the money come from on the outside? Where do I think it's going to come? And then invest in those landing spots.
Yeah, I just want to warn you to be careful, because mentioning time in here sometimes can get you hung or tomatoed or anything else. I've gotten tomatoed before, so I just want to warn you about that. In general,
I mean, the time thing, because everybody looks at profit, but the time thing was, time didn't price things at 3 ETH. We did, right? So we made that bet. They didn't do anything wrong. It was a 0.1 mint. And I think, we have to also take some responsibility. Like they didn't do, I think they've executed well on their roadmap, but, your entry is going to determine how you perceive the project, right? And, we definitely bet heavily on that early on, and I think some people got burned, but that doesn't make it a bad project. That just makes the entry a bad entry, right?
Yep. Okay, so we got some questions from the crowd. I think they're actually ordered pretty well here too for flow purposes. So, okay, let's start off with Mac Attack. So, without giving away all your secrets, where do you look to check community sentiment on small cap coins, Twitter, Telegram? How do you think through
So I have a group, a business school group that I'm in, with some really, really, really like early, I'm talking like 2014 crypto investors. And they are all over like all the tech and the dev and all that kind of stuff of what's going on in coins. Um, and so I start there to get sentiment about what they think is developing, because they don't even look at price. They're all long-term investors. So price doesn't, you gotta be careful where you get your info, because again, just like with some of these investments in NFTs, your entry point could determine what your perspective is on the project, but that doesn't, that doesn't always matter, right? If you bought Bitcoin in 2017 and, crashed out at 20,000, you would have missed this whole run. So I start there. So I have a really good, group there, and then I have a couple of paid groups that I'm in. I think I shared it with some people here, that I just kind of see what the younger generation is looking at in terms of momentum, and I kind of merge the two. So it's a combination of like momentum plays for like leverage longs and shorts, and then kind of accumulating some of these assets that I think are depressed at the bottom here for coins.
TikTok isn't a paid group, is it? That's not the paid group that you're referring to.
No,
Okay.
no, I don't do TikTok, because those ones, there's an incentive, right, for them to they're already bought in, you're buying their bags, yeah. So I don't do that.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I guess like the general takeaway there, Mac, right, is not so much like the specific groups that Easusj is in, as much as the fact that it's it's Telegram groups or whatever with the group of trusted people. And I think there's one other thing that's worth calling out too that Easusj was touching on, which is like, and I've had this issue even this week and prior, that like sometimes you're communicating with people about what tokens are interesting or what project's interesting, whatever it is, and you're looking at it from a completely different time horizon, and you're literally speaking a different language to each other and can't seem to come to the same conclusion as to why something's a good investment or not, only to then realize that you're just looking at a completely different time horizon, with one person trying to like trade it very rapidly in a short time horizon, and the other person thinking about it from like an investment standpoint. So I think whoever the group is, right, just making sure that you understand not just what their thought process is, but also like what their time horizon. Are they swing traders? Are they investors? Like how they think about it, I think is an important thing too.
Yeah, I think importantly than what it is or why you like the project is, I think even more important is like, where did you buy in, right? I need to know that first, before I take anything that you say seriously. I need to know where you bought in, and then like what's your exit. And then I could frame everything you say into that framework, you know.
Yeah.
And if you bought the top and now it's down and you're like, this is a shit project, then I kind of like did value that. It could still be a shit project, but I kind of like weight rate that response to your entry, right?
Yeah.
You know,
So moving on, Lord Marlborough asks, going back to the macro in the next months, what are things you're looking at to evaluate the sentiment, excluding, of course, war-related uncertainty and inflation? So generally, like, how are you thinking about the macro? What are you using to evaluate what that's like and what the sentiment is? That kind of.
I honestly, I feel like the next month is going to be the next month to 2 months is going to really lean heavily on how Yuga communicates what their plan is and what they do with their project. They basically froze the entire market for a week. And then we saw some, everybody's excited on Sunday when, everybody was cashing out at 9 ETH and buying Azukis and stuff. But that was just money on the sideline. That's not new money coming in, right? A lot of money left the ecosystem. So until I see how they kind of communicate their strategy and kind of how, if I start seeing the news kind of talk about it on the outside, I think we kind of stay here for a little bit, right? So I think I'm really just watching, I'm just waiting for a tweet or some kind of thing from them. I mean, I don't know what else would pump this market at this point. Like right now, we're kind of hostage to whatever the vision is and how they communicate it, I feel.
And I think that you're saying that as just as a product of like how much money is in those projects,
Yeah.
what the quantity looks like, and obviously, of course, like the fact that they're just the lead in the NFT space. So the combination of those, I assume.
Yeah. 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 You got it. That's the trifecta right there.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to Wathdog's question. I'm going to just preempt here and say it's a good question, Waff. I'm not sure if Easusj has got an answer for it. So Easusj, if you don't know the answer, feel free to punt it, and we'll find the person for this one. But Wathdog says, doesn't it look like the dollar has peaked? It is at March 2020 levels. I'm not sure if you know about currency at all and have analyzed that at all.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. I'm not a. Yeah, I wouldn't speculate on future. Currency trading, foreign exchange. Yeah.
On the bright side, Waff, we got now a new idea of a topic that we can hit at some point if we ever want to hit currency. So I appreciate that a lot, but I don't think we've got that here. So I just wanted to pause for a sec, see if anybody has any other questions. If you do, I mean, we're informal, so drop it in guest questions if you want, go on voice if you want to, either way. Otherwise, we will, wrap a little bit early today, which is not so bad. So any final questions? We'll just pause for a second or so. No.
When Yuga tweet.
Once I mentioned time, everybody's like, "Fuck this shit, I'm out."
Yeah, I told you. You run the risk of losing all your credibility. You built up a great flow, tons of answers and everything, completely out the window because you mentioned time. So that's the lesson.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think it's a good point to wrap. It seems like. I mean, appreciate the questions from everybody as always. Easusj, just awesome, man. Everyone appreciates you so much in here, and I think you know that. And yeah, so really appreciate you coming on. I'm just going to give one last plug too, which is in announcements, we have a form in there, and the form just has 2 questions in it. It's really fast. It's number 1, like, what are the macro topics that you're kind of stuck on or you want to learn about or that kind of a thing. And then number 2, any guests that you want to flag that you think would be good for numbers therapy as well. So if anybody has just a couple minutes and could fill that in, if you have an opinion, that would be great as well. But otherwise, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to say one more thing because I'm not as active in here as I was before, mainly because I'm not day trading NFTs as much. But my DMs are always open. I think I'm pretty responsive. If I faded you, is by mistake. For anybody in here, you're always welcome to for me to give you all kinds of wrong advice or wrong perspective. But I'll respond to anybody in here. The caveat is I'm not going to tell you what to buy and what not. We're just going to talk about kind of like frameworks and perspectives. I'm always open to anybody here. This is my home. I love everybody in here. And, we just got to ride these little, kind of bearish windows out. And once we get another side, we'll all be stronger together. We all need the skill sets and perspectives for everybody in this group. So the whole, rising tide rises all ships. So anytime you need me, just reach out. I'll do my best to respond.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining today. And, same time next week, Numbers Therapy episode 4. We got a good guest next week too. It's going to be spicy. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, guys. Ladies.